There's nothing quite like a slasher film to leave audiences screaming in terror, trembling with shock, or questioning their sanity. Whether it be a spectacularly gruesome kill sequence or the jaw-dropping demise of a beloved central character, these cinematic moments have left an indelible impression on Fright fans worldwide, with the horrors they have witnessed seared onto the retinas of their mind's eye long after the credits finally roll. So with that in mind, I'm Ellie with What Culture, here with the 10 biggest WTF moments in slasher movies. Number 10. Fear Street Part 1, 1994, Kate's Demise. While Netflix's Fear Street may not be an out-and-out slasher in the vein of Scream or Halloween, enough of the iconic subgenre is channeled through the trio of films to merit a spot on this list, particularly when talking about the WTF-worthy nature of Kate Schmidt's death in the first installment. A fiercely loyal and brave friend to the movie's core cast members, the shock factor derived from Kate's demise was largely due to her popularity amongst the picture's fan base. Nobody wants to see their favourite character die in exceedingly harrowing fashion, but that's exactly what happened here. The climactic sequences of Fear Street Part 1, 1994 sees our protagonists attempting to fend off the resurrected Shadyside killers. Despite her best efforts to defend Dina and Sam from their pursuers, Kate bites the dust in such jaw-dropping fashion that she earned Deb Meat's 2022 Golden Chainsaw for Best Kill. After being stabbed by Skull Mask, Schmidt is then pushed headfirst through an industrial bread slicer for one of the most gruesome ends in recent memory. Number 9. Santa's Sleigh, Meet Santa. 2005's Santa's Sleigh is a slasher comedy which sees Saint Nick's usual characteristics somewhat altered. WWE wrestler Bill Goldberg's take on the beaming personification of Christmas is actually the result of a virgin birth spawned by Satan himself. The 25th of December was traditionally his day of slaying, an opportunity to wreak bloody havoc upon anyone unfortunate enough to cross his path, until he lost a wager to an angel who promptly sentenced him to deliver presents for 1,000 years instead. Unfortunately for the materialistic Mason family, Santa celebrates the lapsing of his mandate by carrying out one of the most hilariously brutal massacres in slasher history. Punting the family dog with a ceiling fan after exploding out of the chimney like the Kool-Aid Man on PCP, Goldberg's character proceeds to dispatch his latest victims in comically savage fashion. It's hard to pick a highlight between drowning the Mason matriarch in eggnog or using a Christmas tree ornament as a throwing star to impale her fleeing daughter. The remainder of Santa's Sleigh sadly never lives up to the opening sequence's sheer WTF factor though. But this magnificently insane introduction remains one of the more memorable WTF moments ever witnessed for the subgenre. Number 8. My Bloody Valentine, Mabel Gets Tumble-Dried. An outrageously violent outing that notoriously had 9 minutes of footage censored by the Motion Picture Association of America, 1981's cult classic My Bloody Valentine was always going to make an appearance on a list of this variety. The Canadian slasher chronicles a berserker-esque killing spree against the backdrop of Valentine's Day, perpetrated by a charming individual decked out in mining gear. Said individual produces a number of spectacularly grisly kills across 93 blood-soaked minutes, but nothing tops an early murder in terms of sheer WTF factor. An impressive state of affairs considering that the death in question actually takes place off-screen. Elderly laundromat owner Mabel Osborne has a card delivered to her containing an ominous play on a classic Valentine's Day poem, before being murdered by the shadowy killer. It's actually the discovery of Mabel's corpse that usually elicits a swathe of F-bombs. Police Chief Newby finds Osborne's grotesque remains stuffed into a still-running dryer, reduced to a withered crisp by the heat of the machine. It's such a horrifying visual that the fact that Mabel has had her heart cut out by the killer is somehow reduced to somewhat of a nauseating footnote. Number 7. A Nightmare on Elm Street, Death by Mattress. Introducing Fright fans to the dream-haunting child killer Freddy Krueger, 1984's A Nightmare on Elm Street follows the supernatural murderer's first selection of victims, the children of a group of parents who burned Krueger alive after discovering his heinous crimes. The original entry in the series also provides one of the more curse-inducing kill sequences in horror history. The gruesome murder features none other than a baby-faced Johnny Depp in his feature film debut, taking on the role of lead protagonist Nancy Thompson's boyfriend, Glenn. Modern viewers viewers may roll their eyes, but at the time of the film's release, every single aspect of Glenn's demise must have seemed beyond disturbing. Freddy's tongue snaking out of the telephone receiver as he taunts Nancy in the moments preceding Glenn's death is WTF worthy in and of itself, but the shockingly gruesome manner of Depp's character's end sets the bar to a whole new level. Blissfully slumbering away, Glenn is suddenly sucked into his mattress by Kruger. His mother opens the door to be greeted with the sight of a literal fountain of blood and gore, erupting out of her deceased son's bed like a volcano on the plains of hell. Number 6. Motel Hell, Vincent's Smoked Meats. Believe it or not, the fact that Motel Hell's primary antagonist Vincent Smith eventually dons a literal pig's head over his own as a mask doesn't even constitute the 1980 cult classic's most disquieting instance. That dark honor is reserved for the satirical slasher's Secret Garden, a gruesome spectacle that plays a pivotal role in the film's narrative. Motel Hell follows the aforementioned Smith and his younger sister Ida, a pair of abhorrent killers who abduct and murder passers-by before serving them up as a local delicacy. Vincent is renowned in the area for the excellent quality of his smoked meats. The Smiths' unfortunate victims have their vocal cords sliced to prevent them from screaming for help before they are planted up to their necks like a horrifying assortment of human carrots. Their captors then feed their crops to keep them plump and healthy up until the point that they are ready for harvest. And no prizes for guessing what that entails. Number 5. I Know What You Did Last Summer, Helen Shivers Bites the Dust. Sarah Michelle Gellar's Helen Shivers was the breakout star of 1997's I Know What You Did Last Summer, a seminal slasher offering following a group of young friends who were stalked by a hook-handed murderer. Effortlessly blowing Jennifer Love Hewitt's wailing lead Julie James out of the water, Shivers is contentiously the most iconic non-final girl in horror history, the beauty pageant winner who still possessed an unshakable will to survive. As such, the fact that it is Helen who bites the dust as opposed to her hysterical counterpart has left fans cursing their fortune to this day. Furthermore, the manner of Shivers' death is so unfair that it would be almost comical if it wasn't such a devastating sequence. This is a woman who quite literally kicked out the window of a police car and jumped from a building's 3rd floor to make her escape, only for director Jim Gillespie to do away with his beloved character anyway. The killer catches up with Helen mere feet from safety, brutally slashing her to death as her desperate screams are drowned out by a passing marching band. Number 4. The Burning, Cropsey Goes Rafting. The Burning follows the murderous exploits of Cropsey, a caretaker who was hideously burned in a prank gone wrong and presumed dead. Cropsey soon returns to wreak bloody havoc on the nearby Camp Stonewater, where he goes on to become the perpetrator of arguably the most WTF-worthy massacre that horror audiences of the time had ever witnessed. After canoes go missing from Stonewater, several camp members improvise a raft and paddle off in search of them. They soon discover one of the missing canoes, only for a homicidal Cropsey to suddenly emerge from the boat and butcher them all, using nothing but a pair of pruning shears. Legendary horror prosthetics artist Tom Savini's mastery is on full display as severed fingers go flying and blood spurts from a litany of nauseating wounds against the backdrop of the doomed character's desperate screams. Contemporary viewers may snigger, but at the time of The Burning's release, this was about as harrowingly violent as anything that had ever been seen on screen. Number 3. House of Wax, Wade's Death. The most shocking death in 2005's House of Wax is undoubtedly that of Jared Padalecki's Wade. Committing the cardinal horror sin of becoming separated from the film's core group, Wade is soon ambushed by Vincent, one half of the murderous fraternal duo, who subdues him by gruesomely slicing through his Achilles tendon. Things only get worse for Wade from there. Vincent encases his agonized victim in molten wax before arranging him as an exhibit in the twins' nightmarish museum. Wade is eventually discovered by his friend Dalton, who attempts to remove the covering from his stricken companion, but succeeds only in peeling off his skin. As anguished tears stream silently down Wade's cheeks, Vincent sneaks up on Dalton. While his initial blow misses its intended target, the killer's vicious swing slashes off half of Wade's frozen face instead. Rather unsurprisingly, the unfortunate young man proceeds to die of shock from his ordeal soon after. Number 2. Wrong Turn, Sentenced to Darkness. The Wrong Turn film series has never been short on WTF moments, a status quo that categorically extends to the 2021 reboot of the illustrious franchise. Wrong Turn's latest antagonists take the form of the Foundation. This ragtag establishment of settlers embraced a primitive way of living prior to the outbreak of the US Civil War, disappearing into the woods, never to be seen again. Well, never seen again by anybody still drawing breath, that is. The film's core raft of protagonists soon find themselves captured by the Foundation, who are revealed revealed to have implemented their own twisted form of judicial system. One barbaric punishment that exists under the Foundation system of law is being sentenced to darkness. Anybody condemned to this fate has their eyes put out with a hot poker, as Luis is unfortunate enough to discover. While this appalling form of discipline is worthy of more than a few utterances of expletives, that's not actually Wrong Turn's headline in this department. A macabre sequence later in the film reveals that this practice is far from an occasional occurrence when an underground chamber is discovered. Full of blind convicts condemned to shamble endlessly around in the gloom, the sightless Luis now numbers among these tortured individuals. Number 1. Psycho, The Cellar. Contentiously the first true slasher film ever made, it could be argued that Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho represented one gigantic WTF moment for cinema upon its release. Utilising an unprecedented combination of graphic sexuality and violence, audiences had quite literally never seen anything like the master of suspense's depraved masterpiece. The 1960 outing chronicles the disappearance of fugitive embezzler Marion Crane from a motel run by one Norman Bates, and the macabre series of events that follow. While the movie's most iconic sequence is undoubtedly the scene in which Crane is murdered in the shower by a shadowy figure, Psycho's most WTF-worthy instance comes when her sister discovers the nightmarish truth behind her sister's disappearance. Attempting to hide in the cellar of Bates' residence, she comes face to face with Norman's mother, finally unmasked as nothing more than a mummified corpse. However, Hitchcock wasn't quite done there. As Vera Miles' protagonist screams her head off in horror, she's confronted with an even more disturbing sight when the figure behind her sister's murder appears in the cellar doorway. It's none other than Bates himself, wearing a dress and a wig to complement his dementedly unhinged smile as he charges towards Leela with a knife. While Bates is thankfully subdued by John Gavin's Sam Loomis in the nick of time, Psycho's cellar sequence remains a front-runner for the most seminal WTF moment in the history of the horror genre. And that's everything for this list. Let us know your thoughts in the comments down below, and while you're there, don't forget to like and subscribe and tap that notification bell. Also head over to Twitter and follow us there, and I can be found across various social medias just by searching Ellie Littlechild. I've been Ellie with What Culture. I hope you have a magical day, and I'll see you real soon.